There are different ways in which the player can react with the game. These are known as the interaction models. An avatar model is the game character that the player represents. This way of interaction is used in games to create an emotional connection with the character, enhancing gameplay. This especially works when the character is customizable, as it allows the player to portray themselves through the character, making the player care for and help the character to succeed in what they are challenged with. An avatar model also allows for a game to have a story, because the story relies on there being a protagonist to revolve around. The avatar model provides this. As well as this, the avatar model provides the player with a character to blame when things go wrong. Despite being blamed when things go wrong, the avatar model then gets no credit when things go right, as the player takes it all. This can be shown in Assassin's Creed. When the player pulls off an amazing combo, the player credits himself, whereas if the assassin falls to his death from a rooftop, it is the fault of the clumsy avatar model. The avatar model can be mostly seen in story-driven games such as role-playing games and platformers, as the player has a character to control. To add to avatar models, there is also the omnipresence model. This is when a player has overall control over the world and the things in it. This can be shown in real-time strategy games and turn-based strategy games because the omnipresence model gives the player a godlike feel to the game. It is most commonly paired with micromanagement in games, as they have an overall control of the situation, giving them a sense of power. As well as the omnipresence model allowing the player to control armies and units, it will also allow the player to manipulate the world itself, changing the shape, size and content of the world. The micromanagement aspect of this model can be shown in games such as the War Game franchise, and the world-changing aspect can be seen in city builders, such as City Skylines. Because of this overall power, the player can change a bad situation to benefit himself if he makes the right moves, backing up the importance of strategy in these games. Because the omnipresence model lets the player order the characters and units around, they do not create a similar connection of that when playing as an avatar. This can lead to the player not being as careful in their gameplay. In games, there are different ways to play them. Firstly, there is single player. As the name suggests, single player is when you play a game alone, both online or co-op. This can involve you playing against AI models, as long as there is no other players alongside you. A game being primarily single player allows for easier gameplay, as they don't need teamwork to complete the missions, just your own abilities. The experience of single player is growing due to the advancement in technology. The development has allowed for better, smarter AIs that give the single player a better experience due to the fact that the AIs are more like other players, making it feel as though they are really playing multiplayer. Most single player games are specific to have a storyline in which you have to complete. Multiplayer games are ones that allow you to play with other players, actual people, to either compete or work together. This can be done both over the internet through split screen with your friends. This creates games with more complex tasks, as you have to work as a team to complete them. As well as this, when designing the game, the developers have to think about balance in the maps if it is a game where players compete against each other, including making the maps big enough to accommodate the players. The experience has greatly expanded due to the technological developments allowing us to host more and more people in servers, making the multiplayer experience more realistic and sociable. The narrative in games can be given in different forms, linear or non-linear. A linear narrative is when there is a direct route from start to finish, and the narrative is also expressed in chronological order as you play through it. A non-linear narrative is one where there are side missions that can be done in game, meaning that the main storyline can be avoided. This could also mean that the main story has flashbacks, making it non-chronological, as it is not in time order. As well as this, the narrative of a game can also be episodic, meaning it has chapters or certain points where the game changes. This can be shown in Hotline Miami, as each and every mission is an individual one that starts in your apartment. Although all the missions play through to get to the end of the game and finish the story, each mission is individual, as they all add together to get you to the end. The episodic style narrative gives the player a sense of achievement more often than a non-episodic narrative that only give achievement when you complete the main storyline. The narrative can affect the restrictions of the game. Usually, in episodic games such as Hotline Miami, the world is very restrictive, and the player can't leave the mission to go and explore, unlike non-episodic games, where it is mostly free roam, and you don't have to be involved in a mission to play. To make a game an enticing game, there needs to be goal, challenges, and rewards. The goal of a game is them that you have to achieve. They can be short-term goals that are sometimes optional, and will reward you with more points, or can be compulsory, that will allow you to advance to the next part of the mission after completing it. The optional goals can be seen in Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor. The mission may be to kill a war chief, however, you can earn extra experience if you kill 2 berserkers beforehand. The compulsory goals can be shown in GTA 5, where you have to break through a fence before you can steal the car. To add to this, there is also the ultimate goal in a game. This is mainly to complete and finish the game 100%. This can include completing the main storyline and any side missions along with that. The ultimate goal can be reached by playing and completing all the short-term tasks, which then add up to allow you to complete the game. This may be a requirement, as short-term goals could reward you with an item which is needed to complete the game, and therefore, if not acquired, you cannot achieve your ultimate goal. To get these goals, you will be confronted with a challenge. This challenge, just like the goal, can be short-term or long-term. The short-term challenges could be things to do before you can attempt the end or next main challenge. For example, I will use GTA again. If your ultimate goal is to steal a car, that is a long-term challenge. However, before you can get to this challenge, there may be a few short-term goals to complete for doing such. For example, you may have to sneak around a building and take out 2 bodyguards, both short-term challenges that help you get to your ultimate goal. Challenges are important in games and link up with the goals to produce the gameplay within the game. Without the goal, there would be no reason to play the game, as you couldn't achieve anything. Without the challenge, there would be no reason to play the game either, as it would be too easy and simple, getting a sense that you don't deserve to complete the goal, as you haven't worked for it. After doing the challenges to get and complete the goal, the player is given a reward as a way of showing their accomplishment. There are 2 types of rewards in which a game can give the player. Firstly, there are in-game rewards, which can help and improve gameplay for the player or allow them to access somewhere. The in-game reward may also be optional to use or collect, or it may also be required for you to collect it. For example, the reward could be a new weapon. This can be left or picked up by the player, dependent on whether it exceeds their current weapon in any way. However, if the reward is a key, it may be forced upon the player to collect it, as it may be needed for the next part of the story. The other reward a player can receive from a game is an emotional or psychological one. These are when the player are rewarded by a sense of achievement for completing a goal. This keeps the player hooked on the game and keeps them wanting to play it, as they feel as though they're achieving as well. This keeps the player hooked on the game and keeps them wanting to play it, as they feel as though they're achieving, as well as seeing that they're achieving due to better items that they acquire. The difficulty in a game is created by the size of the challenge that is between the player and their goal. If the challenge is an extensive and difficult task, then the difficulty of the game is hard. However, if the challenge is simple, or there isn't one, then the difficulty will be easy. In games, the player has the ability to change the difficulty of the game. This is allowed so that the player can find a balance between interest and frustration, as well as letting them find a balance between success and challenge. It is keeping them enticed and involved in the game. If the challenge is too high, then the player will not be able to succeed in the game and therefore get a lack of achievement, making them frustrated. If the challenge is too easy, the player will begin to get bored of the game, as they can skim through the story, not trying. Most games are incremental, meaning that as the player progresses through the game, the difficulty increases with the progress. This is mostly used in games to keep up with the skill and level of the player. As a player first beginning a game, they are not familiar with how it is played. However, as they progress, they become better and then require more of a challenge to compete with how they play. In games, there are different types of actions, both character and physical actions. Firstly, the character action is that of what the in-game character does. Usually genre specific, it can range from a large number of different actions. For example, in FIFA, a sports genre game, there are many character actions ranging from a simple pass to an overhead through ball to many different diverse pieces of skill. Whereas in first-person shooters, such as Counter-Strike Go, there are different character actions, such as firing, reloading and jumping. Each genre has its own set of actions. These character actions can be created in-game by a physical action carried out by the player on their controller or mouse and keyboard, etc. In games, there are a mix of simple physical actions that create simple character actions, such as a simple pass on FIFA is a single button on the controller, and complex physical actions that portray special moves or combos in-game. This again can be shown in FIFA. To pull off skill, the player has to outtake a combination of movements on their analog sticks, getting harder as you pull off better skill. This gives us the idea that the more hard work the player puts into the game, the more we are rewarded by better character actions. The next step up from this is motion control systems, where the physical action is the character action. This gives the player a more real experience in the game as they feel they are the character. Games also have their own set of certain rules. Although these rules can be specific, they can also be predetermined. For example, a sports game such as Madden comes with the rules of American football. This can't be changed by the developers, as then the game would not be an American football game. as the rules would not coincide with them of American football. As well as predetermined rules of the game type, there are also predetermined rules in the world that the game is played in. Call of Duty Black Ops 1 Zombies is a very good example of this. In maps based on the Earth, they have the correct gravity. When you jump, it is low and short. Whereas in the DLC map, Moon is based on the Moon. The rules of the Moon is low gravity, meaning the character can jump higher and longer to simulate this. Along with these predetermined rules, there are also the ones that the game design team programmed into the game. For example, the fact one button will create one in-game action, such as X, makes the player pass the ball in a football game. There are also game-specific rules that determine in-game features of the game. For example, in Call of Duty Black Ops 3, there is a new jetpack system to help the player move around the map. There are specific rules for this. For example, there has to be a limit for how much it can be used, there has to be a limit for how long it takes to recharge, and there needs to be a speed and height limit so the players can't take advantage of it. Because of this, the game has to have its own set of game-specific rules. The game mechanics cover most of the game and determines how it all works together. The game mechanics makes up the functionality of the game and most things within them, such as the rules. One thing in the game that made the mechanics change is the win conditions of the game. This tells the player what they can do in order to win if they can. For example, in Forza 4, the win conditions are to be in front of all other competitors by the end of the track to win the race. Another feature of the game mechanics can change the scoring system of the game. This can be changed depending on what game you are playing. However, mostly the system is to score more points than the enemy, especially in sports games. This can be shown in Rocket League, as the scoring system is to put the ball into the back of your opponent's goal. The scoring system in games gives the player satisfaction as they believe they are doing well after scoring high in their game. The game mechanics can change throughout the game to link with the narrative and structure of the game. For example, in an episodic game such as Hotline Miami, the game mechanic has to make it so the player wins after each stage, as they are all different missions, whereas a linear game such as The Last of Us have different game mechanic, as it has to keep the player playing till the end with no break and therefore always have their attention. The game structure is how the game progresses from start to finish. It will determine where the game will take the player and what routes the player can take after completing the current challenge. These optional routes are player decisions, which allow them to go on in the game however they want to do it. The player can choose to play the game through the main storyline to finish the game, or to diverse into side quests and other missions before doing the main one. The structure of the game can be changed depending on the narrative structure of the game. For example, if the game has an episodic narrative such as in Hotline Miami, there will almost be a game structure for each and every stage in the game, whereas if the game is linear, such as in The Last of Us, there will be one structure throughout the whole game. All the aspects of the game will work together to create more interesting and hooking game storyline. If there are little aspects to a game, then the game will come across as boring and easy to play, and therefore will have a bad game flow as things will not fit together and make sense. The game structure needs to be decided and almost finalized before the programming of the game. This is so that the programmers know what the consequences or rewards or obstacles a player is faced with depending on which option the player goes down. If this is so, the programmer can create the game so that it flows smoothly with continuity and consistency throughout the game. Addiction is a large part in games, especially in mobile gaming. Addiction helps the game to be consistently played and also allows for the developers to get their hands on some more money. Addiction can be put across as both good and bad. A good thing due to it improving and boosting the gaming industry. However, it can be put across as a bad thing as it seems to be ruining or taking over children's lives. Game developers aim to give a perfect balance of addiction and frustration. This balance will enable a game to keep the player hooked for the most amount of time, because when they are no longer addicted to the game, there will be just enough frustration that will keep the player interested until they complete the section they have gotten to. This hold on to the player can also be done through an intense or unique storyline. This will keep the player connected to the game as they will want to know how the character progresses through the game and how it all ends. Everything balanced and combined together in a game will create the best gameplay experience for a player, as they will be hooked into the game whether they want to be or not. The gameplay and mechanics will keep them interested, and even then, when all is seen and done, the game will feel addictive to the player.